everyone, and welcome to another episode of In Your Neighborhood. I am Bill Talia, a realtor with Baird & Warner, and of course we have Michael Korus, attorney at law with the law firm of DKMO. Michael, how are you?
Hi, Bill. Thanks for having me again. I'm glad to be back.
It's our absolute pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule, especially in the situation that we're in, and really give us this opportunity to discuss some pointers here on real estate. And so it really is. We're very grateful for it.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see, we're all adjusting here. I'm working from home today and not doing too much face-to-face interactions with clients. So if you allow me, I grew the mustache out for quarantine season.
Yeah, it's that shelter-in-place mustache. I like it. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we can't get that look we always work with as of right now, but we're looking pretty good. I can
Thank you, Bill. You too.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Michael, what I wanted to discuss today for our purposes here today is the purchase aspect of it, specifically the inspection. When you're purchasing a property, you inspect the property, and if we look at the purchase contract 7.0, specifically paragraph 12, that discusses that inspection once we inspect the property. What is that paragraph 12 state?
Yeah, Bill, it's a great question and a great topic that comes up on every transaction that I do. The inspection is one of the most important parts of the process. So as you mentioned, we've got the 7.0 contract, which anyone who's purchasing or selling a property in the northwestern suburbs, more than likely we're under the 7.0 contract. And there's paragraph 12. And paragraph 12 relates to the inspection. It allows the buyer 5 business days after the acceptance of the contract. So buyers, they go see a property, you show them to a property, they like it, they submit their signed offer of the 7.0 contract. And when the sellers sign that in the form of an acceptance, we now have a binding contract. And that signature from the seller, that acceptance, has started a clock of 5 business days in which the buyer can get their inspection done, and then after raise requests within those 5 business days to the seller regarding the inspection.
And so, just so that everyone knows, when we're talking about 5 business days, that time period, it's 5 business days, not inclusive of holidays or weekends.
Right. Exactly. So if the contract is signed on a Friday afternoon, it's 5 business days after. So that Friday doesn't count. And then you've got your Saturday and Sunday. Presuming then that Monday is a normal business day, you've got 5 days. So that deadline to raise any requests from inspection would come at the end of the next Friday. So that full week, basically. 5 full days.
5 full business days.
Right.
So as long as there's no holidays in between those.
Right.
Monday through Friday.
Example, so like Thanksgiving, that falls in the middle of the week, that Thursday wouldn't count. So it would actually then push it to the next Monday thereafter.
So those are the 5 business days. Again, no weekends inclusive and no holidays.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's very important to know. Now, when we discuss paragraph 12, there's a few parts of paragraph 12. I want to discuss really one of the parts right now is part A. And in part A, it discusses major components. So what are the major components?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bill, because first of all, the inspector, his inspection is going to cover as much as he possibly can about the house. But the contract is designed to really only cover, like you just said, major components. Paragraph 12A defines what a major component is. I won't read through the whole list, but it's the central air, the heating, the roof, the foundation, electrical and plumbing. Anything that would be considered a safety hazard would fall under the major components of a property.
And so let's just say the purchaser has reviewed these items. They've reviewed them with you as well, the inspection. What repairs may a buyer request be completed from a seller? What
Yeah,
types of
great question, Bill. Yeah, so you buy when you walk through the property, the average buyer is probably not a licensed electrician. They're probably not plumbers or tradesmen. So what looks good to the buyer just from going through a walkthrough, the inspection is looking under the hood of the house.
Yeah.
And things might come up that, hey, I really didn't know that the electrical panel is outdated and it's no longer up to code, or there's exposed wiring underneath the kitchen sink. Those are safety concerns. Those are things that you probably wouldn't have noticed on a normal walkthrough, but after you have a professional come in and inspect the property, it makes you a little bit uneasy to want to buy the house in that condition. So that's something, a major component is absolutely something you can tell the seller, hey, listen, we made you this offer, but we got a couple of things that we need to be addressed in order for us to feel comfortable staying under this contract.
Right, right. And so are there examples of repairs that a buyer may not request?
Yeah, great question, Bill. So the contract is pretty clear on what a major component is. It lays out exactly what the major components are, and it actually makes some reference to things that are not considered major components, one of them being the condition of the paint, for example. If you walk into a bedroom and there's a little bit of paint chipping on the wall, or maybe there has some old-fashioned wallpaper that you just don't like, that you want the sellers to replace. That's not under a strict reading of the contract. That's not really falling under what would be considered a reasonable request. The parties can agree to come to terms on whatever it may be, but under the strict reading of the contract, it's only supposed to be those big, major, and safety components.
Let's just say that a major component is deemed safe and is in an operating condition, no matter what the age of the major component. Can it be requested to be replaced or repaired?
Yeah, so this is that, the octogenarian water example, okay? Comes up all of the time. It's a house, the inspector notices that the water heater is functioning properly. It appears to be in working order, but it's 30 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, now under the contract, the age of a mechanical is not deemed, it's not considered non-functioning just because it's past its life expectancy. Right. Written in the contract. However, again, gauging expectations, what's a reasonable request here? It's more likely than not that this 30-year-old water heater's going to make it to see 32 or 33 years old. That's just not likely. And again, buyers can raise the request, and the parties can negotiate a solution there.
Right, and so there's always that give and take.
And to add to that too, Bill, from the seller's mindset, the seller is required to provide a working water heater, but they don't have to provide a brand new one, right? If it's working and it got inspected and it's working, seller may not want to replace that water heater. Again, it's exactly like you said, it's give and take, and we just got to find a reasonable solution to something. Generally speaking, we agree that if we've got an outstanding issue that we're going back and forth on, that contract period remains open pending a resolution of these outstanding issues.
So let's just say the buyer gets this report, reviews the report, discusses with you that they want to ask the seller for repairs. Does the inspection report have to go to the seller with the request?
Great question, Bill. No, it does not. The contract is written such that the buyer makes the requests and sends the requests only to the seller. Upon receipt of those requests, the seller can determine whether they want to see the inspection report. The reason being for that is because this is a protection now on the seller side. Mm-hmm. So paragraph 12A is really, and 12B for the first half protects the buyer. The second half of 12B protects the seller, because let's say this is a property that it's a rental property. The seller hasn't lived there in maybe 5 years or more, so they don't necessarily know the interior condition of that property, because they have to fill out those disclosures. And by law, a seller has to disclose everything to their knowledge to the condition of the property. The inspection report might have information on there that is an update to the seller's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the seller has to disclose everything that they know about the property. So if there's something on the report that maybe this buyer didn't even raise as an issue, let's say maybe the basement is leaking, but all the buyer wants fixed is the electrical. Well, you send that entire report over to the seller now. Now the seller has to report to the next purchaser if the transaction falls through that the basement is leaking.
Got it.
Before they got that report, they didn't even know about it. So the sellers will typically only ask for the items of the report that the buyer is requesting be repaired.
So you don't have to send the entire report to the seller.
No,
You don't have to send it unless it's requested.
Exactly. And that's really the job of the attorney to know that it's not supposed to be sent unless requested. And most attorneys only ask to see the relevant pages of the report.
Got it. Got it. So, Michael, the buyer receives the report, reviews the report, and for the items that they see on that inspection report, they deem the property unacceptable to them, to the buyer.
Yeah.
Can the buyer at that particular point terminate the contract?
Yes, Bill, they can. So again, we just talked about how paragraph 12 kind of protects the seller from receiving information that they do not know about. Paragraph 12C protects the buyer from purchasing a property that because of information that they just found out about. So you get the report back and maybe the buyer's just not very handy, or perhaps they're elderly, or it's just a laundry list of items that, although none of them may be serious components, it's going to be really expensive. It's going to require a lot of work, more than the buyers were prepared for. So long as we are within that 5-day window, a buyer, upon receiving that inspection report, can cancel the contract, get a return of their earnest money.
Because that was going to be my next question. If there was a time limit for that to occur for the buyer, getting the property inspected, reviewing the inspection report, and then possibly deeming the property is unacceptable. So there is that time limit there.
Yeah, and that's critical. And that's why after we get that accepted contract, and that's got to come to the attorneys right away so that we can mark those deadlines, because you blow that time limit, it's gone. You've waived your right to cancel if you miss the deadline. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but if your buyer gets an accepted contract and then they go out of town for a week, or like we talked about, it's just tough to get someone scheduled in for that inspector, it's really uncommon to have an issue with the sellers agreeing to extend that 5-day window. As long as you've got a reasonable reason for, hey, this is why we need it extended, we can push that deadline out as needed, but we'd have to request that extension within the original 5 days.
And that's what it is. It's very imperative. It's very important to be on top of it. When you're purchasing a property, we put everyone that needs to be in this transaction, we already know before we find a property, meaning we know who the mortgage broker is going to be. We know who the attorney is going to be, and we know who the inspector is going to be, because once you find that property, you want to be able to, once you get the contract, you want to get that contract to your attorney right away. Like you said,
Yeah.
You want to schedule that inspection right away, and especially an inspection as well, because a lot of times inspectors, and it's a busy market. And when it is a busy market, it's sometimes hard to schedule within that 5 business day window, getting an inspection in if your inspector is super busy. So it's really important to have all those people in place while we're looking for a home, because once you do get a contract on a property, that clock is ticking.
Yeah, exactly. You should know who your inspector is going to be while you're submitting that offer to the seller.
Absolutely. That's what we like to do, is we get all that information in order so that once we are contracted, we know where everything has to go, We know what we need to do, and it's important because you gotta be organized when you're purchasing possibly the largest investment.
Yeah.
Purchasing, right? It's your home, and it's
And
fantastic.
another point on that, Bill, too, is so you've got 5 days to make those requests, right? You should wait until you actually have the report back before you make those requests, because sometimes we get buyers who are there during the inspection and they say, okay, I know what the inspector is going to have written down. I know what we want to ask for. But I always insist that the client waits till they get the report back, just in case there's anything surprising, because those inspectors, they write stuff down. You might not have noticed it. For example, one time a client thought they knew everything that they were going to ask for, wanted to send it out. I said, let's just wait till we see the report. The inspector had a little footnote that said there's probably a buried oil tank in the back. And the buyer wasn't in that. So you should always wait till you get that report before you actually raise your requests.
Absolutely. And those reports, if you've never had, our viewers, if you've never had an inspection report, they are full of information. So they're not a one-page or a two-page report. They really go through the whole property, and it's detailed. And another point, Michael, that you bring up, I want to talk about is when we're looking at these. You had mentioned that looking at properties, taking tours of properties. Some buyers are not contractors, they're not electricians, they're not. This is not their job, and so it's important that when you do receive an inspection report, if you don't understand something, if you want more information on it, to discuss it with your home inspector.
Yeah.
Because they can enlighten you, they can give you the information that you're seeking, and it's important that you know what it is.
Exactly. And the other thing too that's good to note here is, so you get your report back within that first 5-day window, but let's say there are a couple of items on there that are buyers unsure of because they're not an electrician, they're not a plumber, they don't know how much some of these things are going to cost. Again, it's reasonable to ask for a couple extra days. So you have to call a roof contractor, to call an electrician, to talk to a tuck pointing specialist, and try to get a ballpark idea of what some of these repairs are going to cost. I've found almost always, if you've got a reasonable reason why you need 1 or 2 extra days for something like this, sellers rarely have, not always, but rarely will have an issue with something like that.
And that's a fantastic point, because inspectors will inspect the property, and a lot of times, I've seen in inspection reports, they suggest that you should bring a roofer out, or you should bring an electrician out to take a look at the electricity in the property. And so that's a fantastic point, and that's something that I think buyers should know, that they can have an opportunity to have these items looked at, these specific items looked at, even after the inspection report.
That's right.
As long as, of course, they make those requests timely to you, so that you can request it as well, right? Exactly.
If we've made the request for extra days within the 5 days, then there's no issue there.
Well, that's fantastic, Michael. I really, this is something that is, buyers will purchase property, and they should be inspecting the property. And so I know this information will help a lot of buyers understand what it is, how the relationship is between the inspector, between the attorney, yourself, and what that paragraph 12 is, because a lot of times they may not know exactly what that paragraph 12 is, and it's a good opportunity for them to realize that there's language in this contract that they should be discussing with their attorney as well. So this is fantastic. I really appreciate, Michael, your time and this education that you're giving to us, this knowledge, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Bill. Thank you for inviting me, coming back. Happy to come back again, and look forward to answering any other further questions you might have.
And so, of course, if you are looking for a real estate attorney, if you wanted to have specific questions you'd like to ask Michael, and I'll have Michael's information there, his email, his phone number. Please reach out and contact him. And of course, I certainly appreciate you guys watching. And don't forget to subscribe, press that subscription button. But for behalf of myself, Michael Korus, we appreciate you watching. be safe, take care, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.